Thank you, Kojo, for taking my call. I actually have two questions directed primarily at Mr. Graham. The person speaking just a moment ago used the term scapegoat, which I think is very interesting. I feel as if Pepco has been making trees something of a scapegoat, because the reality is that in the areas that Pepco services, outages are both more frequent and more protracted than they are in areas served by Dominion Power, BG&E, other Allegheny, other nearby power companies that one could argue are in areas that certainly have as much wooded area, if not always as much density in every place.
Okay.
And I happen to live in a part of Montgomery County where we have experienced both frequent and protracted outages, and while they blame trees in many cases for these outages, we only got the trees trimmed, just recently started to be trimmed, when we complained to Pepco that for the last 16 years we've had these outages. And then the second part of my question, and then I'll yield the floor, is that when these outages do occur, whether they're routine or whether they're isolated instances such as the February storms or the Hurricane Isabel and so forth, the triage process for the restoration of power says let's take care of emergency and essential services first, which no one would argue with. And then they take care of other areas purely based on population. And I have that right from a vice president of Pepco who spoke to our neighborhood association. And I would argue that there needs to be a smarter triage process. For example, my neighborhood, when it loses power, is uninhabitable because we cannot use toilets, drains, sinks, etc., whereas other neighborhoods nearby that may be larger...
So you think there should be other factors taken into consideration besides size of population? Allow me to deal with the first part of your question. Tom Graham, Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley joined our Politics Hour program 2 Fridays ago. He said he had a hard time believing that the widespread outages were weather-related, and he questioned whether Pepco had made the necessary investments to maintain its infrastructure, which seems to be the same argument that our caller Shep is making. How would you respond?
Okay, we'll start with major storms. 323,000 customers out of service. 1,900 wires down. 83 poles snapped. They didn't snap by themselves. The wires didn't fall off the poles. 92% of the outages were tree-related. And that's just a fact. We're not looking for a scapegoat. We're just stating facts. We experienced considerable damage. We experienced that damage in February during the 36 inches of snow. We experienced it July 25th. We had a mini storm in the middle of the July 25th storm. We experienced it on August 5th, and we experienced it August 12th. And it's an undeniable fact. You can look at picture after picture after picture with trees down, entangled in utility wires. That's just a fact.
Second part of Shep's question, the triage process. First, you deal with emergency environments, and then you apparently do it by size of population. He thinks other factors should be taken into consideration besides size of population, I guess including the nature of it, the effect on certain customers.
Well,
areas.
It's a great question, and let's go through the whole restoration process.
Do we have time?
We do.
Okay.
3 parts. There's the preparation, there's the assessment, and restoration. The preparation is really just getting all the materials together. The restoration piece has to look at customers that we have identified or facilities that we have identified that are critical to either public safety or the restoration of service. So what's important to us? Down wires, live wires on the ground are important to us. What's also important to us? Well, before we can get to the hospitals, public safety, and other priorities, schools that we might have, if we have a substation that's out of service, and we had 4 that were shut down as a result of the July 25th event, so that's about 12,000 customers that are out of service because the supply feed has been knocked out. And there are 3 supply feeds typically that go into a substation, and then there may be 12 to 14 distribution feeders that come out of that. So with about 1,100 to 1,200 customers per feeder, you've just knocked out thousands of customers, and you can't restore them. It doesn't matter whatever other damage is downstream. You have to take care of that substation first. So you start the substation. Now you start to work your way downstream. Now we can start thinking about, those priority customers. We have special needs customers as well, that we have to consider. And then eventually, the thought process is we do want to bring back the largest number of customers possible. We want to take care of our priorities. A good example was WSSC. If we did not take care of WSSC, there would be no water in Montgomery County.
The Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission, for those who don't know.
That was a high priority for us. 2 hospitals were down in Montgomery County. That was a high priority for us. So at some point, instead of having the ability to restore service to thousands and thousands of customers at one time, at some point we'll get down to 1,000 at a time. And at some point it'll be hundreds. And at some point it'll be one customer at a time. But if everyone is a priority in this process, then there are no priorities. And what I can guarantee you, if we work in that manner, a 5-day outage will be a 7-day outage.